Hello everybody, thanks for coming along. My name's Nick Gant. I work at the University of Brighton, and I set up a design practice in the university called Community 21, and we're interested in issues for communities in the 21st century, locally, nationally and internationally. So this issue of kind of social circularity is something that I find really, really interesting. I guess in many ways, when I think about sustainable design from a design perspective, you could argue that sustainability is a matter of matters. Okay, it's about stuff, whether it's being mined from the ground, pollutions in the air, byproducts and waste that we create through consumption. But of course that consumption is driven by us as people, and we are human beings, and we behave in strange, weird and wonderful ways, sometimes predictable, sometimes not. And the way we relate to those materials is something I'm really interested in, and I welcome you to come and have a look at our stand next door, which is Imagining a Material City, looking at some of these topics I'm going to talk to you about. I started working in this way, I suppose, and this probably relates to what Anne and Libby are talking about a little bit. I was asked to design to rethink a charity shop for a charity back 15, 16 years ago. And we designed this new centre and really kind of maxed out on this idea that what we were doing here was actually reusing. The charity shop obviously is an exemplar of how to reuse within the community setting. And relating, Anne, to what you were saying, the thing that really occurred to us was the values that were created by having former inmates from the locality coming, learning new skills, as you've mentioned before, Anne, building the furniture that then could go into their home that were offered to them by the community and by the local authority, and build a skill set up but reintegrate into the community almost instantaneously and become part of this kind of really rich community. So these objects start to accrue kind of meaning and values. The processes that they use become really critical to their education, as well as obviously reusing stuff, which of course is important. Much further ahead though, we started working with projects like this. So this is a different type of making. So this is what we call placemaking. So this is an example of an urban room we developed on the development site, the biggest development site in Brighton ever. And it's partly our own development site as a university, but with private developers. And we built an urban room there to bring the communities together to envision the future of that neighbourhood. And it's a different kind of politic, but we built it all from materials from the neighbourhood and really started to kind of present this idea of what can be achieved if you look on your doorstep. And the show we're looking at next door is very much about that, about drawing a line around where you are and saying, where are those resources, how do we access them, but importantly, who accesses them and how do they benefit along the way. And that sort of notion of place and place making for us in relation to this kind of notion of social circularity is really, really important. Examples of this are back in, again, this is over 10 years ago, I think back in 2010, we recognised the work of the Marine Conservation Society going out, reaching out into the community and getting them to go out to their local beaches and collect waste that had accrued on the beaches. Of course, something that's very current now, but back then was this sort of niche network of people. But what was really amazing was how they were working together as a community to really take care over the natural marine environment in their neighbourhood. And we felt that that was really powerful. And by collecting up the materials, we thought as makers we could reinforce that by converting very simply a t-shirt press, because the plastics, the majority of which were collected, were thermoformable, and to press them into a pair of flip-flops that they could take away with them. So try and really embed and reinforce that notion that you're caring about your environment, and somehow the materials could actually embody that themselves. And moreover, we'd even print a map on the bottom for you so you know where they come from. So really try and underpin this notion of the provenance of this place and the care that people are taking, and how these materials are elevated from almost the worst of the worst type of materials into something that perhaps people could then really value and champion. So we're working towards this notion that, of course, we have circular economies which sound very business-like and are about stuff and movement of stuff. And as Pablo said, there's complexity there, and it's really important to think in that way. But we're also thinking about the sort of virtuous nature of what we're creating here. We're working with the British Council now as part of their Crafting Communities network, and we've been doing a project for about 4 years now, which we call the Wiki Waste Workshop, which uses technology, takes advantage of social networks, and allows us to share information as part of a bigger community who are trying to realise what the value is of the skills we're developing around circular economies and how we share that, as Anne has mentioned earlier on. So in the Wiki Waste workshop, we built this model with waste experts of understanding if we go into a community, and the first community we'll work with is in South Africa, a township in the Eastern Cape, and we understand its needs and its values and try and ascertain what they are within a particular place, what resources they have available, and then the Wiki Waste workshop is a knowledge share, a knowledge exchange, a space, a place where people can come together and learn how they turn this into the needs and values, but also how we actually share that information and make that information openly available. And our students have been working for 3 or 4 years with our staff using Skype and a networking platform that we've developed to map resources and work with the NGOs and the communities to really add value here. And the value that's being added, though, is entrepreneurship, a sense of identity, learning how the individuals in these communities can sell things to the public, souvenirs, things that have local provenance and value, all created from the lowest value materials possible. So here's Matilda, one of our students, who developed a process of how to take Tetra Paks, which were really abundant in this area, and decouple them as materials to end up with a paper pulp and this silver foil, and weave that and turn that into beach bags and so on. And then here, a combination of this material, which was actually an invasive non-indigenous species that took what was the 5th most biodiverse area in the whole of Africa and turned it into a monoculture of one single material, like rhododendrons have done over here, introduced by white men to stabilize the beach so that they could build their holiday properties on, and of course it's taken over. So to take this out actually allows the biodiversity to come back in. They've created an area where they can invite tourists to come and see what that biodiversity is, but use the materials in productive ways to make money and promote what they're doing. But there's no entrepreneurship education. Many of the women in the community have never been to school, and many of the young people have none of this kind of opportunity to develop their own creative capacity. There's no design teaching in school, and this process is obviously really helping to bring benefit there and providing quite unique outcomes and objects that come from the community itself and develop an identity. And we've done similar projects now in Bali. Bali obviously is within Indonesia, which obviously has been targeted as one of the areas where marine pollution is created, and that's partly because we found that the culture there appreciates nature as being all-powerful, and therefore to pollute in the nature is not a problem because nature will overcome. So it really isn't an issue if you throw things away into the marine environment, because nature is all-powerful and will overcome this. So we're looking at obviously trying to change people's perceptions here without interfering with those local cultures, but getting them to appreciate the opportunities themselves. And we built a software platform that allows us to map and share this content through quite accessible technologies. So yeah, so social circularity, again, we see as much about this. It's about creating meaning. Sustainability is a matter of matters, but the only way we're going to start changing our attitudes towards the stuff around us is to really construct meaning and add value this way. And the project next door, just talk a little bit about Duncan, who's set up the waste zone here and has been leading an EU project that I've been working on as well, where we've been talking about this notion of buildings as material stores, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, about how with Pablo's technology and others we can actually identify how our buildings maintain and sustain the materials for reuse. But I'm as interested in how they become stories too, and that the inherent narrative of materials, when we recycle them, we recycle their materiality, but we also recycle their history and their meaning. And if we present that back out to the world, we move away from homogeneous objects like this, which are apparently the pinnacle of design, but I'd argue there's not much design there really. It's just a rectangle, right, with rounded corners, into things that sustain and promote the narrative. So in this project we've got next door, we've imagined the circular city. We've drawn a line around our site, and we've identified the waste that's available there. And in our city of Brighton, which in the UK is down on the south coast, we have a big recreational culture, we have a big student culture, we have a big restaurant culture. And the materials that come from that are abundant in our city. And it's like many cities, but nonetheless, the sorts of things that come forward from there are things that we can really utilize. So what we've done here is take oyster shells, grind them down as the Romans have done, and has been done over time to create lime mortar and bond them together with the demolition waste from the sites that they're working on, and create new materials. So this is a cladding that's made from 100% oyster shells and demolition waste, and there are a number of these examples here. But what's really important is what we're trying to do is really elevate the value of these materials and present them back. So these are proposed for social housing. We're working with the city and various partners. And what we're really trying to do is create, again, what in architectural terms might be called vernacular architecture, so architecture of its place. And of course we've done that forever. Wherever there's been abundant materials, whether it's thatch, whether it's stone or clay, the buildings in that area will often have been made of that, and we seem to have forgotten that along the way, and we now seem to recruit our materials from all over the world and have championed the status associated with that. What we're saying now, and actually Duncan, some of the clients for BBM and so on, are the people who will probably be seen as high wealth individuals. They want these stories, they want these narratives. Brands want these narratives, people want these narratives, communities need these stories. And by doing this and really bringing this to the fore, we really help to elevate the social fabric, the aspects that really bind the community together from a material point of view, as well as, but also from a social and a cultural point of view. So if social housing was to look unique in each site as a result of the materials that are invested in it, hopefully that would accentuate and add value to our circular economy. So this is just one last example of two bricks, one that's made from local clay and ash that was left over from the clearance of the site to make a set of unique colours. And here again, majority demolition waste. So the old building goes back into the new building, but with a little bit of care and knowledge, not a great deal, you create something that's really beautiful and unique and really accentuates the value of the process. All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you.